It's hard to believe, but this is true, I think. At least in my humble opinion, it's true. I've never seen a potential front runner for the presidency, but undeclared as of yet. Pretty much disqualify themselves from the office that they most likely will seek. Look, if you don't know who I'm talking about, I'm talking concerning the current governor of Florida. He said something in a questionnaire that was, in my opinion, disqualifying of him becoming the president of this country. So he was asked to give his opinion concerning the current ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And this questionnaire came from a friendly source. This was a Fox News Tucker Carlson questionnaire. So it doesn't get any friendlier, easier than this. And you know, in a questionnaire, you have time to sit and think about what you're going to write. It's not like an interview where somebody asks you a question and you have to think on your feet, so to speak. A questionnaire, they send it out to you, and they probably give you a couple of weeks to get it all sorted out and answered. You have time to sit with staffers, people who are supposed to be well versed in geopolitical and foreign policy. You're talking about the presidency. And do you all know that Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, as we call him, Ron Divider, because he's kind of divided Florida up into folks that he likes and folks he dislikes. And the folks he dislikes, well, he operates the same way the lunatic from Mar-a-Lago does. Calling names, saying that they're unloyal, you know, the freest state where I think bloggers and reporters have to register with the state in order to gain permission to write about city government affairs. Sounds kind of Orwellian to me, but oh well. Anyway, he returned the questionnaire, and it got out that he doesn't believe the United States should be aiding and supporting Ukraine. Because get this, you all, this is important, and I'm summarizing and paraphrasing here. He believes Russia and Ukraine and that conflict is a territorial dispute that we shouldn't get in the way of or interfere with. Now, we all know Ukraine is an independent nation, country. But because they were once part of the USSR and they had signed a compact prior to the dissolution of the USSR that they were part of Russia, technically, Ron DeSantis is right. At one point in time, Ukraine was a part of Russia, the USSR. But so were 15 other countries. So if his foreign policy thinking is that it's okay for Russia to bomb and invade every country that was part of the USSR to retake them back, he's got 14 more countries left to go. And Ron DeSantis would be okay with it because they're territorial disputes and not sovereign countries. If I'm in Astoria and I heard that Ron DeSantis, a leading presidential candidate, thinks that Russia and Ukraine is a territorial dispute, boy, I'm nervous in Estonia. If I'm in Kazakhstan, boy, I'm nervous. Because this is a territorial dispute. I'm not looked at as an independent, sovereign country. Georgia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, I guess Ron DeRider has no problem with Russia invading all of those countries because they were once a part of the USSR. Now, many Senate Republicans came out and voiced their criticism of Ron DeSantis and his answer on the questionnaire. But they stopped short of saying that it disqualifies him of the presidency, which I think is the case. Let's face it, if our current vice president had made such statements or answered a questionnaire in a similar fashion, the Republicans in the Senate and in the House would be calling on the vice president to resign, saying she's not qualified to be vice president because she doesn't know geopolitical matters, foreign policy matters. If the current president had said such a thing, they'd bust out the competency test from Nikki Haley and say he needs to resign because he's too elderly. He doesn't know that the USSR dissolved in 1990s. This is what the Republicans in the Senate would be saying. So I wonder why they're not saying this to Ron DeSantis. Yes, this disqualifies him before he even enters. And I've heard a couple of conservative America First Congress members say that they have no reason to believe that there would be a wider issue outside of Russia and Ukraine with their current president, Vladimir Putin. They have no reason to believe that Poland or Germany or any other European Union nation would be attacked next. And I'm sitting there scratching my head going, wait a minute. Did they know he was going to invade and bomb Ukraine? Did he send the United States government a memo saying, here's my invasion date and time? Typically, when someone is not necessarily well and attacks a sovereign nation, they don't alert other governments that they're planning to do such a thing. So for American conservative politicians to say they're unaware of other attacks that might occur is kind of ridiculous, to say the least. But then you all think about it like this. What ground or standing does Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, have now in terms of speaking with China in regards to a potential conflict between China and Taiwan? You know the Chinese government is going to say, wait a minute, what blatant hypocrisy and racism. You say Russia and Ukraine is a territorial dispute, but if we do something similar in Taiwan, you're ready to butt in militarily? Why? China and Taiwan is a territorial dispute as well. That's what the Chinese government is going to say. And they wouldn't be wrong for saying it, technically. So the only person that has ground to speak is our current president, who at least would be consistent and say, look, I provided military aid and support to Ukraine when they were attacked as a sovereign nation. And I'll do the same for Taiwan if they're attacked as a sovereign nation. But this guy, Ron DeSantis, saying all these things about China out of his mouth, he has no ground to stand on now. Because he said that nations can invade sovereign nations. And America should stay out of it. Because it's a territorial dispute. So likewise, China hears that and says that's a green light. Our President DeSantis won't interfere with our territorial dispute with Taiwan. That's the way I would hear it. That's the way any sensible individual would hear it. So how can he be a hawk on China, but a dove on Russia? You know the Chinese government is going to have a field day with this. They're going to say, oh, you're going to invade, attack China over a territorial dispute with Taiwan, but you want to steer clear of Russia and Ukraine? Why is that, Mr. DeSantis? Could it be because we're not European? Yes, they're going to ask these questions of him, and he's going to have to answer. And think about it, you all. This was a questionnaire. He had time to sit and reflect and think about how he wanted to answer this. And to flub a questionnaire that bad tells me and everyone else he's not ready to be commander-in-chief. Florida man better stay in Florida. He's not ready for prime time. It's a well-known fact. And boy, they might get upset at me for saying this. But if you ask anyone off the record, not on the record, off the record, who would the Biden folks rather run against? Oh, they'll tell you in a heartbeat, DeSantis. He's a paper tiger. This man has disqualified himself from the presidency before he's entered the race. And he doesn't even know that. He's so unaware and clueless, you all. A territorial dispute. A sovereign nation was attacked and invaded. The first time since World War II, you all. And he says it's no biggie. It's a territorial dispute. So his foreign policy doctrine is you can invade countries that are sovereign if you had a pact or you were once a part of some kind of republic, union. Boy, the Ottoman Empire better get ready again. What are we doing here? What kind of insanity is this? Countries operating sovereignly now have to worry about being invaded, and a superpower nation such as America says it's no biggie under a potential DeSantis presidency, but then he'll be ready to send American troops to China to fight another superpower over a territorial dispute with Taiwan, because that makes a lot of sense. Who are his people advising him, you all? Because there's some dummies. I hate to say it, there's some dummies. He's disqualified himself from the presidency. I don't think he would have ever been president anyway. He has a great and is clearly evident disdain for Black Americans. The way he's treating Black Floridians in his state is not a good look for the nation. The latest and greatest hit is he's told Floridian children that Rosa Parks wasn't even a Black woman. Yeah, they've erased her ethnicity from the school books. So this is someone who has a great disdain for Black Floridians. That's not gonna go over nationally well. He doesn't know that Ukraine is a sovereign nation and no longer part of the USSR. That's not gonna go over well. And when he starts jawboning with the Chinese government about Taiwan, they're gonna say, look here, DeSantis, you said Ukraine and Russia was territorial dispute. Why isn't our country and Taiwan territorial dispute? What's the difference? Boy, I'd like to see him answer that on a questionnaire. What's the difference between Ukraine and Russia conflict and a potential Taiwan and China conflict? See, he's not ready for prime time. He's a paper tiger, a Trump wannabe, a divider. But please go ahead, make him your nominee. He's disqualified himself already. But they like folks like DeSantis and Trump. That's what they like. I'd like to know how long he had that questionnaire. And they come up with such a horrible answer. And then to review it, have enough time to review what you've written down with your staff, your foreign policy team, your advisors. Review it together. And none of those people catch that huge gap and tell him, look, even if you disagree with funding and military aid, you do know Ukraine is not a territory of Russia anymore. For none of his people to catch that. Boy, he's got some numbskulls on his team. I can't wait. Hey, tell me what you all think. Is that not disqualifying? And would Republicans not be calling for resignations if our current Vice President Kamala Harris had said such a thing? Can you imagine what they would be saying? She doesn't know this. She is not qualified to be Vice President. You know they already don't think she's qualified to be Vice President because she's a woman of color. So anything she says is highly scrutinized. anything she does is highly scrutinized. But this guy, not knowing about the dissolution of the USSR, that doesn't disqualify him. I'm just saying the double standards, the hypocrisy is present, it's clear and present.